Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'm looking at Aeon Trespass Odyssey, a giant narrative and boss battling campaign game for 1 to 4 players. And 2 disclaimers for this one: I was sent a review copy of the base game, and also I've played through a bit more than half of Cycle 1, so there's still a lot I have not played. 2022 was a pretty amazing year for giant adventure games, and Aeon Trespass is no different. How does it stand up to other great games like Oathsworn? Let's find out and get to the list. So first, there's my number 5, which is the expansiveness and size and scope of the game. I'll call this a pro for my taste, but yeah, this one is going to massively depend on how much time you have. Because in the core game, which, to be fair, is very expensive, they have not 1, not 2, but 3 massive cycles, like ridiculous hours of play. Like I said, I'm only about halfway through the first cycle, and I've played for, 25, 30 hours. And the cool thing is there is actually a lot of replay in these if you want to see different story paths and new encounters and make some different choices. And each cycle has its own technology tree and its own gear and its own bosses and its own unique mechanics. The big knock against this that might make it not a pro for you is that it's a huge game. So if you're looking to just play for a little bit or play it casually or, get the same group together time after time, it's going to be a challenge. And also with the extra cycles, each adding on new mechanics and things, the game can, I imagine, get pretty intimidating. I already have a little bit of a tough time keeping track of all the rules for Cycle 1 by itself. My number 4 is still focusing on these books, and that's the story and the world building in the game. For my taste, also a pro. So you've got these long narrative passages, but I do want to give the game credit in that you don't go through huge reams of text all at once. It tends to be broken up in the gameplay pretty well. But the writing is great. The world building, sort of this weird broken version, but with technology of Greek mythology, is awesome. There's tons of variety in the types of adventures you have and how connected or unconnected they are to the main quest you're going on. You also have these inner adventures where you're finding out more about your ship and yourselves. And you have these encounters that kind of build your individual characters. It's all really well done. The one knock I have against it, even though it's still a pro for me, is that because you can go in very different directions with the adventures, and sometimes you won't see the next step in a given adventure for a long time, and the adventures don't generally match up with the part of the map you're on, it can feel a little bit like you're just flitting between vignettes without enough connective tissue. But besides that, I think this is pretty amazing storytelling and really an engaging narrative and world overall. All right, getting to my number 3, I have all these things kind of having to do with the Argo and exploring around with your ship and upgrading stuff all shoved together. These could be 3 or 4 points by themselves. And for my taste, this is a full-on pro. So first of all, you've got the exploration of the map, which looks like it's going to be kind of Seventh Continent-esque. And at first, I thought this was a little bit dull because, the places I meant didn't really seem to matter. I was just looking for, icons and hunting for them. But without spoiling anything, I'll say that they do a lot of cool things to make the map impactful and, have you finding specific parts of the map. So that got better for me and my exploration tastes. But the big star for me, and you heard about this in my ISS Vanguard review, is the ship management. You've got these cool decks you can use. You've got these tech tree cards you're working through. You've got this amazing crafting system and so much variety in the builds you have and how you kind of outfit your people. And I want to give a shout out, even though it's not just focused on the ship, to the upgrading in general, because each of your Titans gets these cards that kind of upgrade their skills and give them these little tech trees of their own that they're going up. And you can even upgrade your Titans and get sort of entirely new versions of yourselves. There's other really awesome, cool upgrades that I'm not going to spoil because they're hidden until later in the game. But yeah, if you're an XCOM fan from way back who likes sort of base management and tech trees, if you like exploration and finding things, I think this game's got just oodles of awesomeness for you to dig into. Getting to my number 2 for Aeon Trespass, we're looking at the bosses, and this is also a full pro for my taste. So after journeying for some number of rounds, you're always going to get into these big battles with Primordials. And yes, they have awesome minis all fully assembled. Love that. And the first thing I love, really cool system, although it's mostly taken from KDM, is the idea of these body part cards. So you're flipping cards for what the AI does. That's pretty standard stuff for a game. But whenever you attack, you flip a card and you can get these critical things. You can wound the Primordial in some major way. They also determine what resources you're getting when you defeat them at the end. So lots of variety in how these battles play out and a lot of dynamics in like attacking and having the enemy respond to you. So that's all very exciting. Like overall, the Primordials and these battles are super tense and interesting and exciting and engaging. Another cool thing is how the enemies escalate. As you hit them, they're going to get better AI cards, but also more vulnerable and tougher body part cards for you to try to take down. And they also escalate as you fight the same Primordial more and more, unlocking new abilities that really kind of drastically change up the way the battles play out, at least for the 3 that I've fought against. And that one thing I just mentioned is maybe the biggest knock against the bosses in the game. Kind of like KDM, Kingdom Death Monster, that it's most inspired by. You are going to be fighting similar monsters over and over again. In each cycle, it seems like they have like 2 sort of main kind of standby monsters that you come up against. Now, like I said, the variety between levels is good, and the battles are so dynamic and changeable that I didn't really mind that. But yeah, if you want like to see a different boss every time you fight, something like Oathsworn is going to take better care of you than Aeon Trespass. And then finally, number 1, the thing I think you should know most about the game is how the player turns feel and what you're doing in combat. And this is the only one that I would say for me is maybe a mix. It still leans pro, but there are more worries here. So on the positive side, man, there's so many to go through. This could probably be like 2 or 3 points by itself. I like the tokens you put into the pool to help out the next player. So you get some co-op and some combos between your characters. Like I set it up so that your like really big hammer can hit better, that kind of thing. I love the Triskelion, and that as your dials increase for like your life and the number of times you've attacked, you get stronger. So just like the enemy is escalating, you are also escalating, and kind of the closer you are to death, the more damage you can also deal. It's a great give and take. In a similar way, I love the trauma cards. When you get hit, you flip these and you flip bigger and bigger ones as the game goes along. But a ton of these help you and give you like bonus attacks or cool powers for the rest of the battle. So it's like really, again, more dynamic and exciting than you would see in most of these kind of games. Now, the big knock I have against this one that could bring it down to a mix is that while you do get cooler and cooler things as the game goes along, like you unlock more powers with your cards, you get more interesting gear and new titans, still what happens on an individual character's turn can be a little bit dull. And you are lots of times going to get knocked down and miss your turn. You are lots of times going to get shoved like 50 spaces away by the enemy and have to spend multiple turns running up. You are lots of times going to have a character get defeated early in the battle. Now, this might not matter at all if you play it solo, which is how I mostly played it. And even 2-player I think could be okay. But like I say, for a lot of these games where you're required to have 4 characters, I think this one is best at 1 to 2-player, maybe 3 to 4. But you better be really into watching other players' turns if you're playing this one 4-player, because you're going to have a ton of downtime. Sometimes you'll be out for an entire battle. And I should also mention there's a ton of luck in your turn, like whether you hit or not, whether you damage the enemy or not. I find that very exciting, again, kind of leaning this pro, but others might find it super frustrating, like when you miss and then well, that was actually a good roll. But when you miss and then miss and then miss again, it's not always fun. So overall, Aeon Trespass Odyssey has blown me away. If it had been reviewed in time for my top of 2022 list, I think it would have been in the top 5, like right up there challenging things like Oathsworn. But I think other players might like it if they like really interesting themes, if they like really intense narratives, huge campaigns, if you like crafting and kind of management, sort of that XCOM feel I've talked about in other reviews. And I think also if you like boss battlers, this has a great combat system. It's heavily lifted from KDM, Kingdom Death Monster, but I think they added some great stuff to it. On the other hand, if you don't have time to dig into this one and kind of make it a lifestyle game for you, or if you don't have a giant table to fit all the stuff, it might not be great. And also there's a heavy dose of randomness and the game can be super punishing, so if that doesn't sound fun for you, you might want to avoid it. And if you want to see the game in action, Barrington did 2 playthroughs covering the full tutorial for the game, so you can check those out. Good gaming, and I'll see you at the next stop.